Lindsey. I've been in Alaska about 12 years, married to my husband, Brandon, who works here. And we have a beautiful little girl named Ella. If you haven't met either of them, I highly recommend it because they're awesome. I'm a little biased, though. So I've been told a couple of times when people got here that I look very comfortable. I am. It's fantastic. When we had our first planning meeting, we talked about dress code. And Crystal told us, dress how you would at home, dress how you're comfortable. People have been to my house before. This is exactly how I dress. I have a hoodie, I have pajama pants, I will have a headband on, and I have crazy socks. That's just me. So I wear this at home. I wear it to Bible study. I wear it to friends' houses. You'll probably see me on the People of Walmart site at some point. This is my comfort zone right here. This year, our theme is #NoFilter, which you can see on everybody's shirts. But it's real women in a real world with real problems who serve a really real God. Basically, we're removing the prettiness from our lives and getting real. So it's going to get awkward, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to get ugly, because that's just how life is. So to start, I will slowly break open a can of the craziness that is me, and I'll give you guys a couple of my quirks that some of you know. But first of all, my hands shake constantly. It is not just because I'm terrified, because I am, but my hands will shake constantly. It's a genetic thing. Probably during this speech, you'll see my legs shaking and hear my voice shaking. That is because I'm terrified. So, yeah. Second, I am the jumpiest person ever. I jump when people walk by me. I jump when people enter a room. I jump when people announce they're entering a room. I jumped about a foot in the air at work the other day, scared out of my mind because somebody was standing behind me. It was the hood of my sweatshirt. It was bad. And lastly, I know some of you have babies with you, which is awesome, but if I see a baby or a dog, I will turn into a meerkat, and I will lose all train of thought. It will be gone. So I will then start to make funny faces at the dog or baby and talk in a voice that no adult should ever be subjected to. It's bad. So that's why I have notes up here. If I see a baby crying I will try to stay on topic, but I make no guarantees. So now that I've broken you in a little bit, I'm going to open up the rest of my crazy. So be prepared. Just so you guys know, I did not grow up in a Christian home. My mom hates when I say that, but I didn't. We didn't go to church. We didn't pray before meals. We never really talked about faith or God at all. It was kind of a taboo subject because we didn't want to offend anybody, and it was never done. This does not mean that I didn't have a good childhood. I had a great childhood. My dad was my hero. My mom still is one of my best friends. My sister bullied me like older siblings should. I annoyed the crap out of her because that's what younger siblings do. It was a fantastic childhood, and we had a great home life. And then, teenage years hit. Dun, dun, dun. When I turned 13, 13 years ago, 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 13 years ago That summer, we stayed at our family cabin in Upper Michigan, and sorry, there's a Michigan fan in here. So we would spend most of the summer up there, and we would walk down the dirt road past all the other houses to see who else was there. And I eventually ended up having a crush on one of the guys down the road, which I swear to you, this story is relevant. There's a point to it. But it was kind of like an adorable after-school special. Like, girl sees guy and has a crush on him, but doesn't feel comfortable talking to him because she has glasses and braces and crazy hair. And, finally she gets the courage to talk to him, and he smiles at her, and he has braces too. It's just one of those things that's adorable. So we talked. We had a cute, adorable little summer romance at 13, which basically means we talked to each other. So after that summer, I decided that I needed to improve myself so he would like me better the next year. So I got contacts, my braces came off, and of course, what does every girl turn to improve herself image-wise? I need to lose weight. I was not overweight at the time at all, but that was the first thing I went to. And in my head, the easiest way to lose weight was just to stop eating. I knew it wasn't healthy. I didn't want my parents to know, so I would eat as little breakfast as I could get away with. I would not eat lunch at school at all. And then I basically would eat the smallest amount of dinner without my parents even noticing. So it did, of course I dropped weight, but that following summer, when I thought, okay, this guy is gonna like me better now that I look like this, he ended up asking one of my friends for their phone numbers. Yes, I know, it was awful. How dare a 15-year-old hormone-filled teenage boy like somebody other than me? So, I'm not blaming this kid. The poor guy probably never knew what I was thinking, what I was feeling. My mental and emotional health was already questionable. But after that summer, what I kind of figured was I didn't improve myself enough. I wasn't good enough. And so I continued my diet because I figured that was the thing that went wrong. I needed to lose more weight. And I hit it pretty well. I wore baggy clothes. I didn't appear in front of my parents at all in something that would show how thin I was actually becoming. But my depression went absolutely haywire. It was awful. But I would always act happier than I actually felt. That was just who I was. And there was a day that I made the big mistake of wearing a bathing suit in front of my mom. And I kind of zoned out at the time because I was so mad at myself for doing this. I felt like I failed and I lost control of the one thing that I could control about my appearance. But there was mention of hospitalization and force feeding, and basically they were just telling me that I was too skinny at the time, which I have big bones and I'm 5'4" on a good day. But over that time, I had dropped to 104 pounds. So you can see every single one of my ribs. You can see just bones everywhere. So to avoid all of that, the hospitalization and the force feeding, I started eating again, but my depression was worse than ever. I was 14 at the time, and I was just completely miserable. I couldn't handle myself. I couldn't handle my life. So I decided I would end it. Sorry. So I planned it out. It had to happen when my parents weren't home and my sister wasn't home because they may try and stop me. But about a week before I had this planned, my cousin Jason, who was a youth pastor at the time, said, "Hey, why don't you and your sister come to a youth conference with us in Colorado?" Okay, sure. One last hurrah before, I end everything. So we decided to go. The conference was amazing, and I really, really felt God starting to work in me. And on the drive home, weirdly, about a day before we got back to Michigan from Colorado, I sat down with one of the youth leaders and made the best decision ever and accepted Christ. When I got home, I told my mom about all the thoughts I was having and about my depression and started going to counseling. But since I really didn't have a good understanding of what Christianity was at the time, I believed the two big lies that most new believers face. One was I could do whatever I wanted because God forgave me anyway. And two was all of my problems would end after this. After I got saved, life would be perfect. I really didn't have the guts to test the first one because I knew for a fact that even though God would forgive me, my parents probably wouldn't. So I avoided that one because my parents' approval was very important to me. But I truly did believe the second one. I thought that life was going to be perfect. So I was very confused and very upset when my depression just didn't disappear miraculously. I started seeing a psychiatrist, and I was diagnosed with clinical depression and got on medication. We fiddled around with different medications and dosages until we found something that worked pretty well. Life it got better after that. Being able to find something that would actually help me. And I dove headfirst into growing in my faith. I went to 2 different church services on Sundays. I went to a Bible study. I became a youth leader for our junior high youth group. I wanted to learn. I wanted to soak up all that knowledge. And the year after I graduated high school, I got baptized because I was ready to be very public in my faith. Then in 2002, I was given the opportunity to work for the summer as a camp counselor at Victory Bible Camp up here in Alaska. Another cousin of mine, Joel, was working with the horses out there at the time, and he's the one who told me about it. It was one more way to grow in my faith, so I took it. Traveling 3,000 miles from home was not easy, especially because I was by myself. But as the summer went on, during one of our weeks of orientation, I met one of the other counselors who turned out to then become my husband. Fun fact, his first words to me were, "You look like crap." So you are more than welcome to tease him about that, by the way. So we started dating that summer, and we did long distance. I came up for the next summer. Eventually, he moved down to Michigan. The summer after that, which was 2004, I worked at a camp for inner city kids. It takes a special kind of person to do that, and I am not that person. I swear to you, I'm still scarred, and that was like 15 years ago. So Brandon and I got married in 2006. We moved to Alaska in 2007. It was supposed to be a 2-year plan. That did not happen. In April of 2010, I found out I was pregnant. Brandon and I were both thrilled. Our families were thrilled. My dad told me that he was too young to be a grandpa, but he was very excited. On the morning of June 8th that year, so about 2 months after I found out I was pregnant, we got a call from my mom, and just letting us know that my dad was feeling a lot of pressure in his chest. He was fine. I could hear him in the background. He was laughing and joking, telling crazy dad jokes like he always did. And they wanted to talk to Brandon because he was an EMT at the time and see what he recommended. So Brandon gave his recommendations. They had already called the paramedics because they live in a teeny tiny town in Michigan, and it takes like 45 minutes for an ambulance to arrive to their house. So we just kind of assumed that everything was okay because you can still hear my dad in the background laughing and telling his corny jokes. I can't remember, like 4 hours later, I got a call back from my mom saying he's gone. It turned out that he had a massive heart attack in the back of the ambulance on the way to the hospital. So he, for pretty much my whole life, he struggled with alcoholism. He was a great dad, don't get me wrong, but the last 2 years of his life, he was sober, and it kind of killed me that he wasn't going to be a grandpa. If that wasn't enough for 1 year, in November of that year, I got another call from my mom, which apparently she's the bearer of bad news, saying that at her yearly mammogram, they found a lump, and they did a biopsy, and it turns out it was breast cancer. It runs in our family, but she was going to have to get chemo and radiation therapy. Luckily, it was stage 1. They had no doubt that she would recover. But it was a lot to take for 1 year. I was just done. Luckily, we ended on a high note, and we had our daughter in December of that year. And like I said, if you haven't met her yet, she's pretty amazing. So I was really, really grateful for that one bright spot that year. And with the new year approaching, instead of getting bad news from my mom, I get hit with another fun thing, which I know a lot of you have dealt with before. It's the lovely thing called postpartum depression. Wow. It was awful. It was, I couldn't function. I was put on different medication that was okay to take while breastfeeding, but it really didn't do anything. I know that God completely had a hand in this, that after 6 weeks, my breast milk completely dried up. Like, no matter what I did, it was gone. And I was able to start different medication because of that. And it got me through. But that first 6 weeks of my daughter's life, I don't remember most of it. I remember a lot of in and out of doctor's offices, and I felt numb. It's not the way you want to start out as a new mom, but once I started seeing another doctor who helped me manage my medications, again, we found something that seemed to work. When Ella was about 1.5 years old, joy of joys, I found out I was pregnant again. So we were incredibly excited. We told everybody we knew. But about 2 weeks after that, I miscarried. I was devastated. And I began to struggle with every aspect of my life. I lost my job because of it, just because I could not function in a normal way to get stuff done that I needed to get done. And so since I had no job, I decided that Ella and I would take a trip to Michigan to see my mom for a couple of weeks and visit with her and kind of, get my head back together. So we were going down to Michigan, and on the plane, which I don't know if you guys have ever had a panic attack, but if you have, I am so sorry. I would never wish that on anybody. When the plane took off, I was dead certain that we were going down. They ended up taking me to the back of the plane and putting me on oxygen because I was freaking out. Another passenger on the plane was a doctor, so he came back and talked to me about what a panic attack actually was, and basically sat there and convinced me that there is no way they were going to turn the plane around and go back to Anchorage, which I begged them to do, basically. So during that time on the plane, I was so grateful. There was a couple sitting across the row from me, watching me freak out, and they said, our kids aren't with us. Can I just hold your daughter, so you can get through this? We'll watch a movie with her, and we'll just deal with it, and so you can get yourself back together. And eventually I did. I think the stewardesses, flight attendants, probably thought I was dragging it out more than I should. Started getting really annoyed with me, but I couldn't get control of it. We finally got to Michigan after changing flights like 18 times because it takes forever to get to the lower 48 now. And I stayed in Michigan for the 2 weeks that I planned, but I could not make myself get back on a plane to come home. So that 2 weeks turned into 6 before I could actually get myself back on a plane. As soon as I got home, I talked to my psychiatrist again and was diagnosed with panic disorder. So, the mental illnesses kept piling up. It was lots of fun. I slowly began to feel like myself again once I got back home. And a few months later, I found out I was pregnant again. And just like before, after about 2 weeks, I miscarried again. So I felt completely empty. And in my head, I knew that we needed to get back to church. We tried out a few churches before, or when we first got to Alaska. They call it church shopping, which is, it's an interesting term, but it's accurate. We had a couple of friends that worked with my husband at the time say, hey, you need to come out and try ACF in Eagle River. So we did that. We came here. the moment we stepped in the door, it was home. We found our people. We attended regularly. We got involved with an amazing life group. If you haven't done that, I highly recommend it. Because you find the people who are your kind of crazy. And, they became our family. But of course, when you start growing closer to God, the devil tries attacking you, which I know every single one of the speakers can tell you this has been happening over the past couple of weeks. So, with everything starting to look better in my life, my depression roared to life again. So despite the meds that I was on, it basically grew until one night I had my mother-in-law watch Ella for me. And as Brandon headed out to work that night, because he worked night shift as an EMT, I told him he needed to take every single medication out of our house. I didn't want it there. And at that point, just taking a lot of pills at the time and not waking up sounded great. The next day after that happened, a couple of ladies from our life group who were great friends came over to get me out of the house and to go to lunch. I was dead asleep on the couch when they came in, and find out that years later, when they came, which when I woke up, they were both standing next to me, staring at me, which is terrifying. If you have kids, you know what I mean. So I found out later, a couple years later, that they were honestly not sure if I was alive or dead. I really can't remember anything else about that day. I remember them taking me to lunch, and I remember them staring at me because it creeped me out. But that was it. That's all I could remember out of that day. And the devil just kept beating me down, telling me I was broken and that my family deserved someone who was whole. And that's the only thing I kept hearing. I rehearsed this at home, and I totally did not cry. So one night I finally cried out to God and said, life should not be like this. Just take me from this life. Give my family someone who is not broken. And the reply I got, which is, it was God speaking to me so clearly, saying, yes, you are broken. All of humanity is broken. But that's why you have me. So that was something that really got me through, and that this loving God was keeping my broken pieces together. I may be broken, but I was worthy of having my family. I knew I was a new creation and that I was loved. I went back yet again to my doctor and said something's not working, and talked for a long time. I think I was there for 3 hours, that poor lady. And we discussed doing inpatient treatment. But the day before that, I had talked to my aunt and found out that bipolar 2 disorder runs in our family. So I talked to my psychiatrist about that, and we got on a new set of medications, and it worked wonders. It actually just happened that it was the same medications that my aunt was on. And I would love to say, as I'm sitting up here sobbing, that all of my horrible times, all of the bad in my life ended after that. But that's not life. I still struggle. I still have down days where getting out of bed in the morning is basically my biggest accomplishment for the day. I call that a win. And I still have panic attacks, not anywhere near as often, but plane rides suck still. We have an amazing support system. We have a life group that is definitely our kind of crazy. They're a group of very special people. They're sitting over here, so I can say that. It's, through all of the struggles, what I learned was that, yes, we are broken, but through those cracks in ourselves, we can either let the devil in, or we can let God's love shine out. We're going to have financial issues. We're going to have relationship issues. We'll have addiction issues. We're going to have issues. We're human. That's what happens. But in Psalms 23:4, it says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. He doesn't say that he's going to make the valley go away. He's not going to fill it up with putty. There will still be struggles. And he doesn't say that there won't be another valley. But what he does say is that he will walk through it with us. He will be there by our side to get through this. I just want to encourage you guys, after hearing all that lovely stuff, that if you are in that valley, if you're walking through that valley, just remember that God is with you always. He will be right by your side, but you are still going to have struggles. That's just how it happens. But he's through it with us. With us through it all. That's what I was trying to say. So that's my testimony. We're going to pray real quick before we take a break. So, 1 second. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the ladies that you brought here today. Lord, I thank you so much that even through all the struggles and brokenness we go through, that you are walking with us. Lord, you're so good to us. You love us so much. And we thank you so much for being our support system and for loving us the way that you do. And thank you so much for all of your many blessings. In Jesus' name, amen.